The wedding venue was straight out of a dream, an elegant countryside estate with sprawling gardens that shimmered under strings of warm, twinkling fairy lights. Towering floral arches framed the ceremony aisle, adorned with a riot of white roses, soft lilacs, and baby's breath. Lanterns with flickering candles lined the walkways, their soft golden glow blending seamlessly with the fading pink hues of sunset. The reception was held in an enormous glass marquee. The inside was an enchanting contrast of vintage and modern, rustic wooden tables surrounded by elegant, velvet-cushioned chairs. Each table was topped with cascading floral centerpieces and ornate silver candle holders. The faint scent of jasmine mingled with the summer breeze, wafting in through the open sides of the marquee. The dance floor sparkled under an extravagant crystal chandelier, reflecting tiny rainbows across the room whenever it caught the light. Kieran Holt leaned against the open bar, sipping on a whiskey sour as he scanned the crowd. His sharp suit, a deep navy with a matching tie, clung to his tall frame like a second skin. His untamed dark hair and roguish smirk made him stand out effortlessly. He wasn't a romantic, but even he had to admit that the atmosphere here could make anyone believe in fairy tales. That was when he saw him. Ian Reed stood near the edge of the dance floor, engaged in conversation with someone Kieran vaguely recognized from college. Dressed in a simple, yet impeccable black suit, Ian exuded a quiet confidence that drew Kieran's attention like a magnet. His well-groomed beard outlined sharp jawlines, and his icy blue eyes seemed to hold secrets Kieran was determined to uncover. "Wow," Kieran muttered to himself. "Now that is a lovely stranger." Never one to shy away, Kieran straightened his tie, set down his drink, and strolled over, his gait a perfect blend of purpose and swagger. He stopped just short of Ian's personal space, a cheeky grin tugging at his lips. "You know," Kieran said, interrupting Ian's conversation, "they say weddings are where sparks fly, and I'm pretty sure one of yours just hit me." Ian turned, his gaze calm but assessing, and Kieran felt a jolt when those piercing blue eyes locked onto him. "You don't waste time, do you?" Ian said, one eyebrow arching ever so slightly. "Not when time could be spent charming someone as striking as you," Kieran quipped. The corner of Ian's mouth twitched, almost imperceptibly, into what Kieran decided was amusement. "I'm Ian," he finally offered, extending a hand. "Kieran," he replied, shaking Ian's hand and holding on to it just a moment too long. "So, Ian, are you here to dance, or do you need convincing?" Ian chuckled softly, a deep, rich sound that sent a shiver down Kieran's spine. "I think you'd be hard-pressed to convince me of much." "Challenge accepted," Kieran shot back with a wink. After hours of playful banter, stolen glances, and slow-burning tension, Kieran and Ian found themselves alone on the quieter side of the garden. The reception was still in full swing, laughter and music spilling from the marquee, but out here the world felt smaller. "You're not like anyone I've met at these kinds of events," Ian admitted, leaning against the ivy-covered wall of the estate. "And you're a lot more fascinating than the usual guests," Kieran replied, his voice dropping slightly, teasing and intimate. "I mean, how many brooding, mysterious men have an undercurrent of biting humor?" Ian smirked, shaking his head slightly. "Brooding and mysterious? That's quite a leap for someone you've known for, 2 hours?" Kieran leaned in, closing the gap between them, his voice a low murmur. "I'm a fast learner. I already know you're clever, confident, and impossible to ignore." Ian met Kieran's gaze, a flicker of something raw and unexpected in his eyes. For a long moment neither of them said a word, the air crackling with tension. Then Ian's lips twitched, and he whispered, "You're relentless." "And you like it." Instead of replying, Ian grabbed Kieran by the tie and pulled him in for a kiss. The world seemed to blur, the faint hum of music in the background turning into static as their lips met in a fiery, consuming kiss. Kieran wasn't sure how long they stayed like that, tangled in each other, but when they finally broke apart, he whispered breathlessly, "That's one way to shut me up." Ian's response was a faint smile and another kiss, this one softer, deeper, leaving Kieran utterly captivated. The room hums with a quiet intensity, illuminated only by the faint glow spilling through the curtains. The air is thick with an unspoken understanding as they both close the space between them, their proximity igniting sparks that ripple through the silence. Eyes meet first, lingering as if daring each other to take the next step. Kieran's hand rises, tentative but deliberate, fingers brushing against Ian's warm skin with an almost feather-light touch. The sensation spreads like wildfire, igniting every nerve along its path within Ian. Breath catches, quickens, their body moving in rhythms finding harmony. A hesitant kiss, testing and soft, gives way to something deeper, tongues teasing, lips exploring. Their hands roam, tracing the curves and planes and every inch of each other's bodies, as if discovering for the first time, memorizing every line and texture. The movements are both instinctual and purposeful, like an unspoken choreography that unfolds naturally, perfectly in tune with the rising heat between them. As barriers fall away, layers of fabric surrendered and scattered carelessly, they stand bare and vulnerable, wrapped only in the warmth of each other's presence. Their touch grows bolder, claiming new territory, drawing sounds from one another that are half-murmured pleas, half-contented sighs. The world around them dissolves, leaving only the interplay of heat and friction, the slow build of tension that threatens to spill over. Each caress, each kiss, and every whispered word fan the flames higher. Bodies pressed together, moving with growing urgency, an unrelenting tide pulling them deeper. Their connection is a symphony, every gasp and moan another note in a melody of shared desire. They push and pull, give and take, chasing the edge where sensation peaks, teetering on the brink until, finally, everything stills, then breaks in a perfect, breathless crescendo. In the quiet after, bodies entwined, the only sound is the echo of their heartbeat and the faint murmur of the night. The moment lingers, the heat of their passion still glowing, leaving them both sated yet yearning for more. Kieran awoke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the faint hum of birdsong outside. The events of the night before hit him like a truck. The flirting, the teasing, the way Ian had pulled him close as if no one else in the world existed. A warm, contented smile spread across his face. He turned over in bed, only to find the other side empty. The sheets were cold, the absence of their occupant glaringly obvious. "Seriously?" Kieran muttered, rubbing the back of his neck as he sat up. On the bedside table was a glass of water and an unopened packet of painkillers. Thoughtful, but no note, no number, no trace of the man who had completely upended his night. The disappointment hit him harder than he expected, but it was quickly replaced with determination. "Fine, Ian Reed. If you want to play mysterious and hard to get, I'll just have to find you." Grabbing his phone, Kieran grinned mischievously. Game on. Weeks had passed since the wedding, but the image of Ian, his sharp suit, piercing blue eyes, and enigmatic smile, remained seared into Kieran's mind. It wasn't just the way they connected that night, it was Ian's sudden, mysterious departure that gnawed at him. Kieran hated loose ends, especially when they involved someone he couldn't stop thinking about. Now, standing in the bustling courtyard of Eastwood University, Kieran adjusted the strap of his messenger bag, his other hand clutching a coffee cup. The early autumn air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of fallen leaves and brewing lattes. Around him, students milled about, rushing to classes or lounging on the stone benches. He sipped his coffee, scanning the crowd almost absent-mindedly, until there he was. Ian Reed. He was leaning against a lamppost across the courtyard, engrossed in his phone. Dressed in a sleek black jacket and dark jeans, he looked every bit as composed and attractive as Kieran remembered. That familiar flicker of excitement sparked in Kieran's chest. Kieran froze, watching Ian from afar for a moment, debating how to approach him. Should he be casual, charming, over-the-top dramatic? Finally he smirked. "When in doubt, go bold," He crossed the courtyard, dodging students, and stopped directly in Ian's line of sight. Ian glanced up from his phone, his expression going from indifferent to surprised when their eyes met. "Well, well, well," Kieran said, grinning like a cat who'd caught a particularly delicious mouse. "Fancy running into you here, Ian Reed. Should I call this fate, or do you prefer destiny?" Ian's brows furrowed briefly before a hint of recognition dawned. "Kieran," he said flatly. His tone wasn't rude, but it definitely wasn't welcoming either. "You remembered my name." Kieran placed a hand dramatically over his heart. "I'm touched. Did you think about me at all, after disappearing like some kind of Cinderella?" Ian sighed, his gaze flicking away as if looking for an escape route. "I'm not really in the mood for flirting? Teasing? Or do you just need more coffee to deal with how charming I am?" Kieran cut him off with an impish grin, holding out his own cup. "Here, take mine. It's caramel macchiato. Sweet, just like me." Ian rolled his eyes, but there was a faint twitch at the corner of his lips that Kieran didn't miss. "Persistent, aren't you?" "I prefer determined," Kieran countered smoothly. "By the way, you never gave me your number. That's hardly fair after the night we had." "Because it was one night," Ian replied, his voice clipped. "That's all it was." Kieran mused, pretending to consider Ian's words. "Nope, don't buy it. You liked me too much to let it be just one night." Ian's jaw tightened, but his faint blush didn't escape Kieran's notice. Just as Ian seemed poised to reply or walk away, a bubbly voice broke through the tension. "Kieran, right?" Kieran turned to find a petite, cheerful woman standing nearby. She had shoulder-length dark hair and an easy smile that radiated warmth. She looked between Kieran and Ian with obvious curiosity and amusement. "That's me," Kieran said, flashing his best grin. "And you are?" "Lisa Kim," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "Ian's best friend, and apparently someone who's arrived just in time to witness whatever this is." Kieran shook her hand, his charm ramping up instantly. "Nice to meet you, Lisa. Tell me, are you here to back me up or whisk Ian away before he falls for me all over again?" Lisa laughed. "You're something else, aren't you?" "Oh, he's relentless," Ian muttered, finally sliding his phone into his pocket. "Relentless is what it takes to win over someone as guarded as Ian," Kieran quipped. "You wouldn't believe how hard it was to track him down after he ghosted me at the wedding. You know, Cinderella here left no glass slipper behind. Very inconsiderate." Lisa's eyes lit up with interest. "Wait, you are that Kieran? The one from the wedding?" Ian groaned softly. "Lisa." "Oh, this just got more interesting," Lisa said, ignoring Ian's protest. "For the record, Kieran, you get points for effort. Ian doesn't let just anyone get close." Kieran's grin widened. "I knew I was special. Thanks for the confirmation." "I'm standing right here, you know," Ian interjected, his tone laced with irritation, but his cheeks visibly pinker. "And we're all grateful for that," Kieran teased, winking. As the three walked toward the campus library, Lisa chatted animatedly with Kieran, clearly enjoying his bold personality. Ian, however, walked a step behind, a visible mixture of exasperation and reluctance to leave. "So," Kieran said, glancing over his shoulder at Ian, "are you always this grumpy, or is it just when I'm around?" Lisa snorted. "He's always grumpy. It's part of his charm." "I beg to differ," Kieran replied. "His charm lies in those eyes. Have you noticed how they change from icy to molten when you hit the right nerve?" He turned dramatically to Lisa. "Like when I do this." "Do what?" she asked. Kieran abruptly stopped in his tracks, spun around to face Ian, and leaned in far closer than necessary. His voice dropped to a velvet murmur. "Tell me, Ian, do I make you nervous?" Ian stared back, unblinking, though a faint flicker of discomfort, or perhaps amusement, crossed his expression. "No, but you make me tired," Lisa burst out laughing. "You two are killing me. I can't handle this dynamic." "Well, Lisa, you're officially my favorite," Kieran declared. "Tell me, what's the best way to get Ian to let his guard down?" "Oh, I wouldn't tell you outright," Lisa replied mischievously. But let's just say persistence might be the key. Good thing persistence is my middle name, Kieran said. Eventually, Ian stopped walking and crossed his arms. Look, Kieran, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I'm really not looking for anything right now. Kieran studied him for a long moment, the playful gleam in his eyes softening slightly. Fair enough, but you should know something. Ian raised a brow. What's that? Kieran smirked. I don't give up easily, not when someone, is worth chasing. Without waiting for a reply, Kieran winked at Lisa and walked off toward his next class, leaving Ian staring after him, his expression unreadable. Lisa grinned and nudged Ian. You like him. Lisa, you like him, she sing-songed. This is going to be fun to watch. Later that evening, Kieran sat at his desk, sketching a plan in his notebook. He'd seen enough cheesy BL dramas to know how to escalate the stakes. Operation Win Over Ian was officially underway. Watch out, Ian Reed. I'm just getting started. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Kieran Holt decided he would step up his game. He'd spent the past few weeks relentlessly pursuing Ian Reed, teasing him, flirting with him, bombarding him with exaggerated drama straight out of the BL dramas Kieran loved so much. But it was clear from Ian's terse responses, eye rolls, and the way he'd look away whenever Kieran spoke that Kieran had to crank things up. And so, Kieran's plan was simple: become a regular fixture in Ian's life, and eventually, Ian would have no choice but to admit how unavoidable and irresistible he was. That was the theory, anyway. Kieran smirked to himself as he walked toward the campus cafe where, conveniently, Ian was just getting in line for his usual. The bell over the door jingled as Kieran sauntered inside. He spotted Ian almost immediately, standing with his back to Kieran, focused on the coffee menu as usual. Kieran felt that familiar flutter of excitement. It wasn't just the thrill of flirting with him, it was the certainty that every interaction brought him one step closer to wearing down Ian's resistance. Kieran sidled up to the counter, pretending to be totally indifferent as he waited for his own coffee. In reality, he was mentally rehearsing a few of his latest lines. When Ian turned around and saw him, he couldn't resist himself. Kieran greeted him in the most casual tone he could manage, leaning forward slightly, his voice deliberately honeyed. "Good morning, babe," Kieran said, drawing out the B sound to ensure it sounded extra playful. Ian's body tensed for a moment before he spun around, his eyes locking with Kieran's with an intensity that made Kieran's smirk widen. His reaction was instant, and despite the usual icy exterior, there was a subtle flicker in Ian's gaze that betrayed his surprise. "What did you just call me?" Ian's voice was clipped, clearly uncomfortable with the term. Kieran, however, didn't miss a beat. "Babe," he repeated, not even flinching, "you've been keeping your distance, so I figured it's the least I could do. Don't you think calling you babe suits you? I mean, after all, we've shared a moment already, haven't we?" Ian's expression shifted momentarily, something between disbelief and frustration, before he muttered, "I don't remember agreeing to anything like that." "Well, tough luck," Kieran shot back with a grin. "We're officially in the babe zone now, and honestly, I'm not the kind of person to let things slide." Before Ian could form a proper comeback, Kieran continued, his eyes gleaming. "You know, one day you'll admit it. I'm irresistible. No amount of glaring or running away is going to stop that. You're a goner already." Kieran knew that his tone was half joking, but there was a certain confidence beneath the teasing, one that Ian found, he would never admit it, frustratingly charming. At this, Ian gave a small, almost defeated sigh. "I'll pass." Kieran smirked as Ian walked away to grab his coffee, clearly flustered but still putting up a fight. Kieran, however, was nothing if not persistent. He picked up his coffee, already brainstorming what he could do next. If a little name-calling worked, then it was time to turn things up. The next day, Kieran got the perfect idea while scrolling through his Instagram feed. He had spent an unhealthy amount of time obsessing over everything related to Ian. From Ian's slightly messy hair to his signature leather jacket, Kieran had absorbed every tiny detail and had come up with a plan that would make any soap opera jealous. And what was the best way to carry out this plan? An Instagram confession. Kieran grinned, snapping a candid photo of Ian's shadow as they walked across the campus quad together, Ian's posture as rigid and indifferent as ever. The sun was low, casting long, elongated shapes on the pavement. In that moment, Kieran could practically hear the dramatic music swelling in the background of a scene from his favorite romance dramas. He captioned the post, never hesitating. He stole my heart, but isn't willing to take responsibility. Then, tagging Ian's handle in the post and clicking share, Kieran sat back to observe the inevitable fallout. The notifications started rolling in almost immediately. Friends, mutuals who had no idea what was going on between Kieran and Ian, started commenting. "Kieran, my dude, are you okay? That sounds dramatic. Honestly, that's too cheesy for me, bro." But none of those were as delightful as Lisa's comment. Lisa Kim commented, "You're making him blush. He'll deny it, but we all know it's true. You've won him over, Kieran." Kieran laughed out loud, staring at the glowing screen as he grinned at his own audacity. It wasn't going to win Ian over immediately, but he could already tell that it was getting under Ian's skin. This, in Kieran's mind, was progress. The more Ian denied it, the closer he was to admitting he cared. But it wasn't long before Ian found the post himself. Ian's face flushed the color of a tomato the moment he saw it. He stormed toward Kieran, his expression a mixture of exasperation and disbelief. "Kieran," Ian began, the words gritted out through his teeth. "You really just did that?" "Oh, did I?" Kieran shot back, eyes glinting with mischief. "I didn't know we were keeping our feelings a secret." "I never agreed to any of this," Ian growled, rubbing a hand through his hair in exasperation. "Yeah, sure. But you did share a night with me, didn't you?" Kieran pressed with an overly theatrical shrug, as though the revelation was one everyone should already know. "Trust me, Ian, once we share something like that, it's hard for me to forget. It sticks with you." "I can't believe you'd post that." Ian's voice dropped to a murmur as he shot a quick glance around the cafe to see if anyone had overheard. "You're ridiculous." But despite his coldness, Kieran could swear that he saw a faint blush coloring Ian's cheeks. Of course, Ian tried to brush it off, but the faint tint was undeniable. Kieran smirked, and before he could tease any further, Ian let out a sharp exhale and turned away. As Ian started walking out of the cafe, muttering something about needing air, Kieran turned to his phone and added another playful post. "Babe, it's okay. Responsibility's a long road. Let's take it slow." He chuckled to himself, basking in the mild success of his cheeky stunt. With every post, every word, and every glance, he could feel Ian softening, just a little. Just a little. Later that afternoon, Kieran met up with Lisa, who was looking entirely too amused for her own good. "You did it again, didn't you?" she asked with a grin. Kieran's smirk broadened. "Guilty as charged. And you saw Ian's face. Pretty priceless, right?" Lisa rolled her eyes, chuckling to herself. "You're relentless. But you know what? I think it's actually working." "Oh, I know," Kieran replied, voice lowered in dramatic fashion. "It's only a matter of time before he gives in and admits I'm irresistible." Lisa snorted. "Keep dreaming, Kieran. He'll say no for now, but there's definitely something there. Just be careful. Don't push too far." Kieran shrugged, a glint of determination in his eyes. "Love always triumphs in the end. I'm not backing off. Not yet." That night, Kieran sat alone at his desk in his dorm room. His Instagram post had done what he expected. It had caught Ian's attention, annoyed him, and embarrassed him all at once. The only problem now was figuring out his next move. Something bigger, bolder, maybe something unexpected to keep Ian guessing. He mused to himself, letting his fingers trace the empty spaces of the notebook in front of him as he carefully crafted yet another plan.